So Measure U is a ballot measure on the November ballot, on 1 week from tonight. What the City Council decided to do back on July 2nd of this year is put this on the ballot based on the input and feedback that we got from all of those community meetings that Chief and I did. So those in-person meetings and presentations that we gave, but also over 1,000 written survey responses that came in. Those of you that have been here for the last year have probably seen 4 or 5 different direct mail pieces come to if you're a registered voter, I think it's basically what it's based on. Different kinds of surveys, brochures, asking you for your opinions on how the city is doing in providing services, but also your priorities, what you think the most important city service priorities are. So we took the feedback from all of that, and we had, again, probably close to 1,500 different individual responses to those surveys. Presented that to the City Council back in July, and they made a decision based on that to put Measure U on the ballot. It is a local sales tax. The fancy name is a transactions and use tax. A lot of communities have done these, especially in the last 10 or 15 years. Right here in Port Hueneme, the voters back in 2008, November 2008, approved a half-cent local sales tax. It's called Measure W at that time, and that is still on the books. So people, when they shop here, go to a restaurant here, they pay that half-cent, and that's generating about $900,000 to $1 million a year for our general fund right now, and that doesn't have a sunset on it, so it continues on into the future. And that's been very helpful in getting us through all the craziness that has happened with local government budgets and finance in the last 10 years. And Measure U would be an additional local sales tax. This would be a full cent, and it would generate, we're guessing right now between I'm guessing we have good numbers because it's based on what we know Measure W would generate, $1.8 to $2 million a year of additional general fund revenue, which would not only solve the shortfall that we have in the general fund each year, but would provide some additional revenue for doing the things that people have been telling us they want done in all these meetings that we've been going out and having with the community and in those written survey responses. So not going crazy with new spending or new staff hiring, but doing some strategic investments. One of the things, for example, that with the chief is people have been saying we'd like a little more traffic enforcement in Port Hueneme. We really don't have a dedicated traffic officer or motorcycle officer here now because some of the cutbacks that happened 3 or 4 years ago. So the chief, we believe, will be able to hire at least one dedicated traffic enforcement officer with the additional money that comes in from Measure U. That's one example. Graffiti removal is another thing we hear a lot about. We have folks in the community that keep our feet to the fire to keep graffiti removed, which we appreciate. And we would be looking at either a part-time or full-time graffiti removal worker that we used to have, again, before the budget cuts, so 4 or 5 years ago. We would now have the funding to really be even more aggressive trying to keep control on graffiti, which is not only a visual issue in the city, it's a public safety issue too, because most law enforcement people will tell you it's important to stay on top of graffiti and make sure that it's not staying wherever it's painted too long. And it can sometimes be associated with either street gangs or tagger gangs that go around doing graffiti, and that can lead to a lot of other stuff that we just don't want to do. So that's an important thing that we would be able to do. Just a couple examples of things that we would be looking to add or enhance our current service level with if Measure U passes. One of the nice things about these local sales taxes and why a number of communities are voting, it always has to be voter approved, which is why we put it on the ballot for this next election. The money cannot be messed around with by Sacramento. One of the things that has happened over the last 25 years really in California is when the state leaders in Sacramento get into a budget crisis, they have found creative ways to take money that used to be local revenue sources, property taxes is one example, to solve their budget problems in Sacramento. These local sales taxes are protected so that if voters in Port Hueneme approve them, the state, that money stays local, and the state cannot take it from us, even if they get into their own budget prices over there. So it's one thing that we really like about this particular option. I should have mentioned when I first started that we have some handouts. We were going to try to project PowerPoint onto the screen tonight. We put some hard copies of this PowerPoint that I'm kind of walking through right now back on the back table there. So grab one of those if you want now to follow through with us, or take one with you if you'd like. In that PowerPoint is the exact wording of Measure U, and it talks about basically what you will see on the ballot if you have not voted yet. And it just describes what we've been talking about, a 1 cent or full cent local sales tax measure with funds going to the general fund, which pays for all of our bread and butter services here, police department, street maintenance, park maintenance, all those things, that street lighting, things that are very important in terms of the day-to-day services that the city provides. I'm going to have the chief take over here and talk a little bit about some of the specific benefits that Measure U would have to the police department if the voters do choose to approve it next week.
So like Rod said, is before we even started this process, we went out and mailed out surveys and actually talked to many organizations, many associations about what they wanted, what their priorities were. Primarily, what we got out of that was quality of life issues, traffic enforcement, graffiti, handling the homeless, or addressing the homeless issues that we have in our community. So with that in mind, one of the things that we plan on doing with the passing of Measure U, if it does, is adding a traffic officer and adding a homeless liaison officer whose primary function is to provide resources to the homeless population, and so they're not camping out on our beach, or so that they're not roaming aimlessly in the streets of Port Hueneme, along with getting a public works person to address covering up the graffiti within 24 hours. Right now they have a part-time worker that does it on an as-needed basis or as an as-available basis, and we would have somebody that's directly dedicated to this job function. Some of the misnomers out there that you may have heard about Measure U I'd like to address, such as police officer salaries. Some of you may have heard we're the highest paid police department or second highest paid police department in the county, and that's just not true. We pulled all the numbers recently, contacted other departments and associations, and actually put together a spreadsheet. And we are now, after the last 8 years, we're now the second from the bottom, second lowest. Santa Paul is the only other agency that's lower in salary than we are. So we are far from being anywhere being the highest paid police department in the county. As well as our dispatchers. Our dispatchers are actually the lowest paid dispatchers in the county. Some of you may not know we actually have a full-time communication center here at the police department as well, where we have 5 dispatchers that actually run our 911 facility on a 24-hour basis. So they are one of the lowest paid as well. So I kind of wanted to let everyone know that that's just not true. Also, there was also talk about that we didn't talk to the community and we didn't do any outreach. And as you've heard here multiple times, we did talk to multiple associations and communities about what was happening and what their priorities were before actually bringing this measure, which we brought before the city council and subsequently passed on a 4-to-1 vote. I'm trying to think of what else. We're here, and a lot of you have seen what has been written and sent out by the city, has been published in pamphlets and mailers, and so we're really here is to answer as many of the questions that you may have about this measure, so you're better educated when you actually go out and vote next Tuesday. And so that's what we're really here today to do. And if there's anything that we haven't addressed, well, let's talk about accountability. That's something that actually has been talked about recently is how are we going to account for all this extra money coming in? And one, there has to be an oversight committee assigned to oversee how the money is spent. There's independent audits that are done on an annual basis, which account for the money. And any additional spending that we do as a result, this money has to be passed by city council as well. So three different things in place which will account for how this money is spent. One of the things that the city manager talked about is it may bring in $1.8 million to $2 million in additional revenue on top of what we're getting from our dispensary money. And why do we need so much money? Is because we're planning for the future. We don't want to just bring in enough money to cover us for right now. We need to build up our reserves. We need to plan for 5, 6, 7, 10 years out. And so we decided to take a multi-pronged approach to handling our budget deficit. So not only are we using our dispensaries as additional income, as many of you have seen in our city, but the sales tax measure is in addition to that. So we hope that with those two revenue-generating items that we're able to recover from our budget deficit, add some additional services, and replenish our reserves over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, one of the things we're really trying to focus on is get stability in the city's budget for the long term, so we're not doing this constant from year to year. Are we going to have to draw more money from reserves, or are we going to bring in the exact amount that we spend? The city, over the last 12 years, 8 of the 12 years, we've had to draw from our reserves, kind of draw from a savings account. 4 of the years, we actually had more revenue come in than we spent. So it's been a mixed bag, but most of the time, we have been drawing from reserves. Fortunately, we had our past city councils that ran the city pretty conservatively and had built up quite a large amount of money in our general fund reserve, especially for a city of our size. So that has kept us from becoming the major crisis that it might have been if we did not have any reserves. But at some point, we've got to bite a bullet and say, let's get us to a point where we are matching at least our revenues with our expenditures each year, and ideally have a little bit more coming in each year than we're spending, so we, like the chief said, we can restore those reserves, take care of some of the building maintenance and street maintenance that has been put off in these last few years, and really run the city at the level that I think, from what we're hearing from the residents, the expectation is, we'll be maintaining those parks, maintaining the city buildings, the maintenance of the city public landscape is a big deal we hear about. So we're trying to create a situation where we can do that consistently over time and not this constant fluctuation from year to year.
As many of you know, we are the only city that's landlocked in our county. There's no available growth in terms of population or bringing money in that way through property taxes or just development. We haven't grown more or less than by thousands in either direction in the last 15, 20 years. And where other cities such as Santa Paula, Oxnard, Ventura, they all have land to grow and expand, to bring in more people, bring in more revenue. Here we don't have that option, so the sales tax revenue is really one of the only resources that we have in terms of increasing our revenue in the city. So really good.
I'm going to point out too that the election, if you haven't voted already, and if you are registered, unfortunately, the deadline for registration was last Monday, the 22nd. Yeah. So if you haven't registered already, you're out of luck for this time. But if you haven't voted yet, we really do encourage you to come to meetings like this, get to know. I know this at least 3 council candidates, 3 of our 5 city council candidates in the audience here with you tonight, so you may get a chance to meet them. There are 3 city council seats up this year, 3 of our 5 city council seats, and 2 of our incumbents have decided not to run again. John Sharkey, you may know, lives over in Surfside 4, 24 years on the council. He's decided he's had enough after 24 years, so he is not running again. And then Tom Figg surprised us a little bit. He was elected in 2014, so he's just wrapping up his first term. He has announced he is not running again. So we're going to have at least 2 brand new city council members. The one incumbent who is running is Jim Hensley, who lives up in Hueneme Bay, north side of town, and he is taking a shot at under 4 years. So depending on what the voters do with Jim's re-election race, we may have 3 new council members, or we may have 2 new plus Jim coming back. So either way, there's going to be some significant change on the council. And you've got a voice in what happens with that, especially in a smaller community like this. I know it sounds cornball, but every vote does count when you're in a smaller community like this. So I'd encourage you to, if you haven't already put your your ballot in. In fact, I've got some updated information, just a little reminder, that if you are voting by mail, your ballots have to be postmarked by Tuesday, the 6th. So a week from today, to be counted. So make sure you get them in the mail early enough to get that November 6th postmark. And then you can also drop off your ballot at any polling place in Ventura County. Does not necessarily have to be. If you work in Thousand Oaks, you can drop off your ballot at a polling place there if that's more convenient for you. And then remember to sign the back of your envelope, because they will not accept it if you don't have it.
And dated.
That's right, sign and date. So that's our little pitch about the importance of getting out there and voting, and it's coming up quickly. So again, as the chief said, we cannot tell you how to vote, so you have to look at the issue and vote your conscience based on the information you have, but we want you to at least know a little bit more about what Measure U is all about, and hopefully answer any questions you have. So we'll turn it over now to your questions.
Yes. So my name is Deborah Baber-Savala, and you say that you can't tell us how to vote, but we see signs like this all over the place. Yes, on Measure U. We've gotten at taxpayer expense all of the different things that you said that came to our doorsteps. So I just had a couple of things. So Measure U on the Fleisch-Kincaid readability test scores as though you have to have a PhD to adequately comprehend what it says. It seems dishonest, like there's something to hide by using words to mask what the truth is. Audits and oversights are mandated by law. That is not something that you guys are giving us. They are mandated by law. So how much money of our taxpayer money is being spent politicking for this new tax? That's third. By invoking law enforcement, and I like Chief Salinas a lot. He's a terrific guy. By invoking law enforcement services and quality of life issues, it feels like extortion. Meaning that if we, the taxpayers, don't agree to a new tax, our law enforcement will suffer, we will suffer as a result of that, and importantly, our quality of life will be diminished. Lastly, let me see if I get this straight. A number of years ago, Measure W was passed for a half-a-cent tax, and that continues to this day. 2 years ago, cannabis was passed to bring more revenue into the city. It was advertised as a financial solution. But still, 4 years ago, the city had to cut law enforcement. Why in the world should we approve an additional tax when it sure seems to me that the city has not spent the money that it has wisely already?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. I'll address the first issue first, which is we have yes on Measure U signs. Those were not placed by us. The Ocean View Pavilion management has been a vocal supporter of Measure U. They've had it on their marquee sign for...
Is this a government building?
No, this used to be. It was
It's
actually,
privately owned?
Yeah, it was actually built back in the old days of redevelopment. This was a city arts, public arts facility, or arts and performing arts facility. It was sold 15 or 20 years ago.
For money.
Private ownership.
For money. Yeah, raising funds.
So, I don't know if I should have you read your whole list again or,
Happy to do it.
or not, but I think
How much money has the city spent on the mailers, and that's taxpayer dollars? How much money has the city spent? And the mailers do say, vote for Measure U. And so you had said that that's not supposed to happen, and there's laws against that happening, and yet we're seeing it happen.
Well, first of all, I would have to see the mailer that came from the city that says vote for Measure U, because I don't think that exists.
The city manager endorses it.
Well, city manager and police chief have signed a lot of mailers that have gone out, but everything on those mailers is educational. It's not advocacy. It's not. I would challenge you to find yes on Measure U in any of those mailers that have been paid for with city funds. So that, and the courts, this has been tested a number of times by folks that I think come from the perspective that you're coming from in terms of the city spending money to advocate for tax measures. And the courts have consistently come back and said, you can educate, but you can't advocate.
It's a fine line in words.
That's true. That's true. But we would rather have the voters informed about what this is, rather than,
So we're informed that we would lose law enforcement services. We are informed that we will suffer a quality of life diminishment if we don't vote for this tax. That is the issue at hand. It is that kind of argument that is put out on the literature that I strenuously object to. Feels like extortion.
I don't read it that way. So going out and talking to the community, their biggest issues are quality of life issues. And I've named them homeless, traffic, as well as the graffiti and so forth. And that's what the people want. They've been suffering of the homeless. Those are the top 3 complaints that I get nearly every day. So in order for us to address those issues, this is one way for us to do that. It's the sales tax measure. So yes, if it doesn't pass, then things will continue right now because we don't have a measure in place or a revenue source to help us address those issues. In terms of losing the police department, if we continue on the same path that we're currently on with this budget deficit, we are going to have to outsource or contract services, such as through the Oxnard Police Department or through the Ventura County Sheriff's Department right now, because we can't continue on the same plane if we don't find revenue measures. So that's, when we say that in the literature, that's what we're talking about. Is if this doesn't pass, that is a possibility. So that's what we're trying to let people know. Yes, sir.
So if we do contract with the Ventura County Sheriff, is that savings or is that going to be more expensive?
We don't know yet, because we didn't want to open up that door quite yet in terms of going over there and asking them what it's going to cost. If this doesn't pass, that's going to be one of the first things I do, is go and contact the Oxnard Police Department, Ventura County Sheriff's Department, to see if the services would actually be cheaper or if they would be more expensive.
yes.
The reason I asked is because Camarillo, Thousand Oaks, Fillmore, Moore Park, I'm missing one. Oh, they all contract with Ventura County Sheriffs. So I'm just questioning, is there a cost saving? Is it more expensive? What would it be?
They don't have the revenue problems.
Yeah, so to address that really quick is, the community has shown here is that they want a local police department, because you do get a different service. We are the fastest responding police department in the county. We're one of the few that actually responds to medical calls still. You're not going to get that type of service with Oxnard or with the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, in spite of them already contracting with other cities. So there is something to be said about having your own police department in your own community.
I understand that, but the other question is, we don't have our own fire department and we get pretty good service.
Yes, we do on Second Street.
That's a county fire department.
But we still have a fire station here in our.
Right, and we would, and all these other cities like Camarillo, they all have police stations also. So I'm just comparing out.
Sure.
I'm just making a comparison.
I worked in local government for 30 years in the cities that had police departments that didn't have police departments. And I can tell you the savings when you're in a contract city are not equal to, you're still going to pay big bucks. Police services are very expensive. It's the single largest expense in most cities. Like contracting out, I've been in cities where they've looked at contracting out and they found out that they're not going to save any money, but they very often lose services. When you're contracting out, if you want, the contracting agency will tell you, we'll be glad to give you X number of officers. However, they're going to cost you for each one of those officers. I was in a city that ran into some financial problems. A city of 200,000 people, we lost 26 deputies in 1 year. And I'll tell you, does that make a difference? Yeah, it does. And so I think if that were to happen here, folks would be very, very upset. It's not a good thing to see. And once you lose your police department, it's very hard to get back. Startup costs in the police department are incredible. And it's hard to, one of the other things is it's hard to attract good officers to a department that is struggling financially. If things are in and out, up and down, you wind up getting a lesser quality of officers. And a lesser quality of officers increases your problems with risk management, etc. So I see this as an enhancement of existing services. There are services that are being provided now. We'd like a little more service. We'd like the idea of the traffic enforcement, maybe a commercial enforcement, those kind of things. And I think that's something that we're looking for out of this measure.
Yes, ma'am.
What does the city spend, say, per officer in the Hueneme budget? And then also, you never answered the question about how much the city spent for Measure U information.
Yeah, so it's probably between $60,000 and $80,000 over the last year, total, all in. That would include all the mailings, the postage, the production of those documents.
Where does that money come from, and where does it come from if Measure U doesn't pass?
Yeah, it would be budgeted in the general fund expenditures, yeah. Yeah, there's no way to really justify taking it out of any other fund.
So salary rates are between $125,000 to $150,000 per officer in terms of how it affects our budget.
Is that with or without benefits?
That is without benefits.
If we're talking with benefits, how does that change?
You're probably adding another $50,000 to that, so about $175,000 per officer.
So Thousand Oaks, which contracts, I did this research this year, pays about $261,000 per officer, just FYI. They're also consistently rated amongst the safest cities in the country as well for their size.
They're also
For
one of the
what it's
highest
worth.
paid departments, right?
Yeah. So just for comparison.
Unfortunately, the measure is huge too.
If I understand correctly, there's not a current plan for if Measure U doesn't pass. Like, is there a timeline for when that change in police potentially would happen? What's going to happen if Measure U doesn't pass? Is there a plan?
So let me answer the first part real quick is, you won't automatically just see an immediate drop in police services or all of a sudden we're saying that's it, we're closing up shop. There'll be a process involved. There'll be other means of us looking at other revenue measures, talking to our new city council and seeing what direction they want us to go in, whether it be perhaps a parcel tax or look at development on the beachfront again, things of that nature. But that'll obviously be the last resort in terms of eliminating services here in this community, would be police services. The problem is that right now we're at absolutely the minimum amount of officers that we can have on our department, which is 22. If we have to eliminate police officer positions, then it becomes a problem. Then now we're incurring more overtime than it would have been having eliminated those two positions. So that's why we have to look at other options if it doesn't pass.
So if Measure U doesn't pass, we still may be able to keep a police force and maybe potentially add if the city can find other.
Absolutely, because there's enough in the reserves right now to still kind of keep this ship afloat or keep this going. And so we're trying to handle this before we get to that point.
And one other thing, I noticed we talked about how you communicated with community groups. You mentioned a lot of Surfside and beachfront. Can you speak to what you did? We live in Hueneme by Bard School. What you did to communicate with our groups of homeowners that didn't have that HOA?
So we did visit Surfside 3. We visited Handicap View Beach Homes. We talked to Beachport Villas and Beachport Condos, I think it was called. We didn't get to absolutely meet everyone. Everyone else would have had to have been educated based on our social media, on our departments, on our city's webpage, which we have a webpage dedicated to Measure U and educating the community on Measure U. So those were the other measures that we used to outreach to the community.
So the bulk of the outreach was from like kind of the more, the higher income areas?
Right.
Oh, no, we were at Hueneme Bay. We were on both ends of the town, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we live in Bubbling Springs area, and we don't have any input on this, so just make the same point she
We
made.
got the
And that was-
major, we did,
yeah, that was the
but
point,
it
you
seems
know,
like you
that's-
guys had a lot of community meetings in beach communities and not necessarily in the middle of the.
Can I just say something about that?
The ones that don't have HOA.
My name is Tom King, resident here in Fort Wayne. I'm over at Acapulco Beach. I have a place in Surfside Lawn. But we, in particular, we knew what was going on, so we invited them into our HOA and had them speak to the people in our community we offered the HOA behind us to come and participate as well. So all my point is relative to your point, which is a good one, is that we had asked and invited the chief and
That they were asked. And I appreciate that. I'm really active in the library. I know I met with you a couple years ago at a library function, but we didn't hear anything about measuring meetings at the library or at the community center over there. And I think that in the future that would be something that as a community member.
Yeah, that actually, especially for that central part of the city, that would be a good location here.
A lot of invested voters in that section of the city too.
Yeah, and that's.
Yeah, in my section, because we're not an HOA either.
And that was one of the points of the mailers too, was to make sure that those people that weren't in an HOA could at least get this right now. They went to every registered voter if they were supposed to.
Can I just finish the thought, because I thought this lady's comments were really good, this gentleman. We have an author amongst us today's letter to the editor. I'm a yes on Measure U. And Steve Kinney's letter to the editor has quite a few facts in there. And one of them that I like the most that I think we can all identify with is just that the city has been, I'm going to say financially in trouble for some time. Legal suits we all know about, people that have come and gone. There has been, as far as I know, no cost analysis regarding whether it should maintain the police department the way we have it now versus, going out and taking a look at what the outside else is done. But that's something that the new city council can do. But from all the people that I talked to, and honestly, the people I talked to, there's only a few who are against this measure. The question is, well, what then? What do you propose? What is the positive item that you propose? And honestly, one of the most priceless things we have here, and the reason we all move here, is the beach, the ocean. Some people are closer than others. Okay, sorry. But, but the point, and we just had a big meeting over at City Hall, Searchlight 3, the bungalows, there's a whole area over here that's got a significant problem that's emanating from Oxnard. Smells, noise, health issues. We're, and so really all I wanted to address is, if you were to have Tom Figg, city councilman here, in one of his, it was around the end of the year type of addresses, talked about the $1 million structural deficit that this city has. Well, we've had it for a long time. We need to do something about it. Rod, you've been here for a short period of time. Our city attorney, a short period of time. Mr. Kinney, a short period of time. They're not the individuals that I'll say help to create the problem. They're there to try and solve the problem. And so for me, the idea of saying yes on this Measure U is buying time. It's giving us an opportunity to get a house in order, put some money on reserve, do a cost analysis. But that the burden of that's going to be on the new city council. So.
Going back to the discussion about the sheriff's department and everything, before either of you were ever in your positions, the city council did check into doing outside sourcing. And it was going to cost them a tremendous amount of money more than what they were paying the police department.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just out of pure curiosity, the officers that work patrol, they write citations, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's part of
Okay,
it.
do you have any idea how many per officer per watch?
But I know that it's not a lot, because we don't have a lot of that proactive time to do traffic enforcement. Many people don't know, on average, we have about 3 officers out at any one time out on the streets patrolling the entire city of Fort Hueneme. And that's responding to not only regular calls, but the medical asked them, how many officers do you think are patrolling the city right now? We got 10, 13 as an answer. There's only 3 at any one time, 4 on a good day, if no one's off on vacation or sick.
Are those two-person units?
So there's 1 person units. So we can't have fewer officers than that out on the street at any one time.
A rhetorical question. If government knows it can always go back for more money, what incentive is there for them to change the way that they are governing so that we get, as citizens, the essential services that government is supposed to provide, safety, etc.?
Well, one of the things that I didn't mention earlier tonight, but I usually do in the presentation, is talk about, the cost side of the equation is equally important to, so in other words, we can't just constantly assume that the taxpayers are always going to say yes to more and more increased taxes. So we're trying to look at the expenditure side of our budget as well as the revenue side.
To that specifically, can you point to several examples where the city has made significant changes to the way that they are governing to save money?
Yeah, so I talked earlier about some of the cuts that have been made over the last 3 to 5 years in the police department, in our public works department. There used to be, just in the management of the city, there was at one time, I think, 8 or 9 department heads or department directors. That's now at 5. And they did, I'm not taking personal credit for that because that was all done before I got here back in 13, 14, 15. All 3 of those years there were cuts going on. So I think the city, we continue to look under every rock that we can, but I think you can point to a lot of evidence of management staff cuts, evaluating some of the contracts that the city has. There's been no cost of living increase for city employees. I think for most employees in maybe 5 or 6 years, for other employees 8 or 9 years. That's why I get a little irritated when I see some of the next door stuff about how this is all about pensions or this is all about employee pay raises, because I think Port Hueneme has done a pretty solid job of holding the line on the compensation side of things. So those are just a few examples. It's important that we not always assume that we can just go out for another tax increase.
And in your estimation, is the cannabis industry in Port Hueneme paying off like you thought it would?
It is now, yeah. Right now, we have 4 dispensaries open, and the revenue that is coming in from the 4, I don't want to get into specifics about each particular business, but it's about $60,000 to $70,000 a month in general fund revenue. That's just the 5% development agreement fee, where the city gets 5% of the gross revenues of those cannabis-based businesses. So if you annualize that out, that's a significant, take $60,000, for example, times 12, it's $720,000 a year in the general fund, and that is just the 5% fee. Sales tax, which they have to pay, is on top of that. So we get local sales tax from these cannabis businesses, just like we do from the new Habit Burger Grill or the new Ross Resto West store. So that's money even over and above the 5% fee. So that's why when we're talking about trying to solve the problem for the next decade as opposed to trying to survive for the next year or 2, if we can get several of these things working together, Measure U revenue, cannabis business revenue, I mentioned Ross and Habit Burger Grill, Ace Hardware. The city has had some new businesses come in and fill vacant retail space over the last 2 or 3 years. Those combined are adding up to some significant money in sales tax every year. Property values are up, so our property taxes have been trending upward. I'm feeling more positive about Port Hueneme's long-term financial prospects than I certainly was 2 years ago when I got here. We're starting to see some positive trends in 3 or 4 or 5 different areas, and that's where you can start thinking about, just how are we going to survive for the next 12 months, but maybe we can get our general fund on a sustainable path for the next 10 years or more.
So if Measure U doesn't pass, will you start to feel badly about the finances?
It definitely is it'll be more challenging to be successful for many years if Measure U does not pass. We still will have some of those good things happening in cannabis, revenue will still be there. Now, one thing about the cannabis, because I know you've asked a couple times, I always tell people we don't want to put all of our eggs in the cannabis basket because that is a brand new industry kind of coming out of the shadows, becoming legalized. We're doing well now for one reason, because we're the only act in town in Ventura County that's allowing these. So we have people from all over the county coming to the dispensaries in Port Hueneme. If, let's say, Oxnard 2 or 3 years down the road decides to allow some dispensaries, or Ventura allows some cannabis businesses, or there are just changes in the regulations or the nature of that whole industry that would impact our local cannabis businesses here, it could hit, negatively impact our revenues. And so we don't want to rely just on cannabis revenue. We're happy for what we're seeing now, and we'll enjoy it as long as we can, and we'll try to help that industry be successful, but we don't want to rely on any one revenue stream.
I would bet if you were challenged, you could be really creative.
And hence with the new council, hopefully we'll have some new ideas as well. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned pensions, a big frustrator with next door. We've all felt frustrated with next door. What is our unfunded pension liability? And are you saying we don't need Measure U to help pay it off?
Well, what I told the reporter from the Ventura County Star, because they have taken a very, not just Port Hueneme, but they are very focused on the pension issue in a lot of their articles. I am not going to stand up here and say that increasing cost of pensions is not going to be a challenge for us and for every city that's part of the CalPERS system. So it's something that we will have to deal with. We'll really start to feel it 3 to 5 years from now. But that's the point of getting prepared for that, is so that we are ready. And one specific thing we've done, City Council has done about a year ago, we established a separate, it's called a pension benefit trust, and we were able to place $2 million into that trust. We hope to add a little more each year so that when those employer rate increases hit, we can actually draw from that account and have it be less of a severe impact on the year-to-year budget. So it's definitely a challenge. We are not in as bad a shape in terms of, if you look at our unfunded liability compared to, let's say, our annual budget, where our situation is not as scary as it is for a lot of cities. The police department here, for example, I'm going to try not to get into the weeds too much. A lot of cities went to what's called the 3% 50 benefit formula, which is kind of like the Primo Highway Patrol benefit formula that was all the rage back in the early 2000s. A lot of cities went with that. Our police officers are 3% 55, which is still a very good pension benefit, but it's less expensive than the 3 at 50. So there are some things that Port Hueneme did or did not do that have helped us be in a position that is as precarious as some of the other cities in the area. But it's still going to be a challenge for.
And what are we looking at as far as unfunded?
I think the unfunded for pension, we are in the mid $20 million range. And when you throw that number out, it scares people because a lot of people think that we have to, like a year from now, we're going to have to come up with $25 million. That's not really how it works. It's paid over time. But that would be for pension only. We do have a small, you're probably familiar with the term, OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and that's retiree health care coverage. Again, Port Hueneme never went whole hog into lifetime retiree medical, which a lot of cities and counties did, and they're now kind of paying the price for it. So I think we're in about the $2.5 to $3.5 million range for long-term retiree health or OPEB liability. And that's a manageable number for a city of our size.
Did you mean to say that the present value of the unfunded liability is $20 million?
Yeah, that's what we're, if you look at the PERS updates it every year, and then we actually are required to have an independent
actuarial evaluate for us just every 2 years. And we've been hovering in that $23 to $28 million range in the net present value.
Yes, sir.
Can you speak a little bit to how the citizens oversight will work for the review? Who will be selected, how many people, how transparent will that process be?
There's a lot of flexibility. The law says, I think as she pointed out earlier, Deborah,
Yes.
the state law says that you have to have some kind of a citizens oversight accountability board, but it leaves a lot of flexibility for each city in terms of how you do that. So we're going to be looking at, for example, Ventura has just set up their voters approved a half-cent sales tax in November of 2016. They now have their committee in place. We're hearing that it is working pretty well, so we're going to take a look at their model. Santa Paula did a full cent local sales tax November 2016. We'll look at what they have done as well. So we'll look at models from other cities, and we would like to give as many people the chance to be involved in that as possible without having a number that is unwieldy. You know, if you have a committee of 27 people, you're going to have trouble getting a quorum consistently. But you want to have enough to have, for example, people from the central part of the city that aren't always well represented. We tend to have people either from the coastal area here or from the northern part of town. So we want to get some good geographic mix on that.
So if we vote yes on Measure U, we won't know what the citizens oversight will look like until after it passes?
That's true. That's true.
That's a good
Yeah.
start. I mean, I want to vote yes on this, but there's some concerns in that.
Yeah.
I worry about what citizens oversight will look like and how it will be communicated to all of us so that if I were, or someone in my neighborhood was interested, how would we even get involved in that if we're not necessarily the target demographic to who you're asking to be part of these
Right.
meetings?
Yeah,
I
I
just
would
want
say,
you to keep that in mind.
yeah, that's good. I know Ventura does I've got a copy of it on my desk. They do an annual report that's produced by their oversight committee that says specifically, you know, here's how this money was spent for the last 12 months.
That's also required by law.
Right.
That report is required.
Right, but I like the way Ventura has formatted it.
Are they posting it somewhere for other people, for the rest of the city?
We'll certainly put ours on our web, if it passes, if Measure U passes, we put ours on our website. My suspicion is, I haven't looked myself, but I would guess that Ventura, you can probably access it on our website.
Is there oversight for Measure W?
No, at that time, well, there's oversight in the sense that it's part of the general fund budget, and the budget is a public document, and the meetings that the council, where the council discusses the budget, are public meetings. Measure W was passed back in 2008 at a time when the state legislation was a little different. It didn't require as much in terms of a separate committee as these measures do now. So, but if there's ever any question about how the Measure W money is used, it goes into the general fund. And I can tell you, for example, 43 to 50% of our general fund budget every year is the police department budget. So a big, significant, the biggest chunk of general fund budget each year is what we keep.
Would it be fair to say that, because I think that's a great question, that because this is kind of in your ballpark, that for those people that are interested, they can be in contact with your office and you can keep them informed as to developments?
Sure, and there's a whole Measure U section of the city website that is, we've got all the mailers that have gone out, other information, and there is some discussion about what is required with the oversight and accountability process, although, like the chief said, the council hasn't defined that yet for exactly what it will look like in Fort Wayne. But the website would be a great place to start, but you're also welcome to talk to either the chief or me with any specific questions.
Yes, Jay. Say it passes, how do you see it impacting the average citizen, you know, in terms of purchasing retail or explain the use part of it a little bit?
Yeah, so the most common thing that you'll see, and one reason that we like the sales tax option as opposed to some of the other revenue options the city has, is it spreads the burden not just to property owners or just to residents, but we know in a city like Port Hueneme, where we have a lot of people coming from outside of the city to work at the Navy base, work at the port. We have people from the county areas that come in and shop along Channel Islands Boulevard, so they will pay some of that burden of the increased tax. For every $100 purchase that you make, let's say at Ross or at Ace Hardware, it's going to cost you $1 more.
Well, Hueneme doesn't have too many big ticket items. I mean, like, when I go to sales tax, you might buy something, you know, an appliance, a car.
Yeah.
When I just go to buy, like, a meal or, I don't really, you know.
Right. I don't think it's going to impact people now going to other cities to buy their meals and buy their food and clothes and whatnot, because it's going to, a $3 cup of coffee is going to cost you 3 cents more. And how many people actually really look at their sales receipt and see how much sales tax they're paying? A lot of people don't know that in Los Angeles you pay 10.75%. In Santa Barbara you pay 8.75%. So increasing our sales tax here is not really, we're not going to the extreme. Long Beach, I think, is just 10.5.
Over 10 now.
Yeah, they're way up there as well. So.
In LA County, the voters have approved at least 2 of those countywide transportation sales taxes, so it's at least a full percent just in that in LA County than if you are in a city that has approved additional ones. That's what pushes Long Beach and some of the other cities up close to 10 or over 10 now.
A good chunk of that potential revenue will not necessarily come from residents.
Yeah, that's what we liked about it. A little political inside baseball here in Port Hueneme. When we recommended putting Measure U on the ballot, it was approved on a 4-1 vote by the city council. Councilmember Tom Figg is the one who voted no, but he was not coming from the perspective of, we don't need additional tax revenue. He wanted to do a public safety parcel tax, which would have just impacted property owners. And Tom has a lot of strong feelings about why that would be a better option. He and I have debated it, so I'm not talking behind his back negatively. But I had concerns about putting all the burden just on property owners. Well, at least with the sales tax, you're spreading it among not just Port Hueneme residents, but tourists that come in. Again, we know that we have residents in the southern part of Oxnard or the coastal unincorporated areas that come over and shop or eat on Channel Islands Boulevard, so they're paying part of it, and which I think is fair because they're also driving on our roads, and they also call the police department from time to time, so I think it's not unfair to expect that they would pay part of the burden of that.
A classic example of that with statistics is our dispensaries. Over 50% of the customers coming into our dispensaries are from the city of Oxnard. Only 10% of the customers come from the city of Port Hueneme. So it's a classic example of how the sales tax revenue will be generated using people that don't even decide that they're community.
A lot of people just are opposed to increases in taxes just in general. I mean, nobody wants to do that, but personally, I don't really see it affecting me much at all throughout the year.
So I was at Tony Silverman's office today, and I love looking at that photo of Hueneme. And I was studying it, and I noticed that the base has probably 30, 40 acres of cars on it. 3 times as many cars as the port can hold. What kind of tax revenue do we get from them? Because they are, in effect, in business, and I think they get paid like $2,500 an acre per month, maybe more. Do we get revenue from that?
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't realize until I really started interviewing 2 years ago for this job is the city's largest single general fund revenue source is the Port of Hueneme. We get 10% of their gross revenues each year. We actually have, I won't point him out, but we have the budget and finance officer of the Port of Hueneme here in the audience tonight. And hopefully he will speak up if I say anything too off base.
Make it 11.
So it equates to about $1.7 million for the general fund each year. And then on top of that, the city, or the port contributes what's called the Community Benefit Fund, where if their revenues hit a certain target each year, they will contribute $100,000 over and above all their other payments to us.
Well, I'm asking about the cars that the Navy is storing for tax revenue on that?
No, just like the commissary, we don't get any money as a result of the
Yeah.
money they generate from their
That's
commissary.
something we could negotiate.
Well, what we do get though is those cars still have to travel on city Port Hueneme roadways. And Oscar, if I'm not mistaken, don't we get $1 per car?
$3.
We get $3 per car that comes off of their ship. Whether it ends up going into Wyoming, the Navy base, or elsewhere, we get $3 for every car that comes in.
And when a customer of the Navy base has a, long-term contract with the Navy, they have to pay utility interest tax. I'm not sure if that impacts the city or not.
So when a car truck comes on and takes 20 cars out, that's $60.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Another question, so if passed, how much time, when will you know that it's working? So that you can say, we don't need any more money, or sorry folks, we need more taxes.
I think certainly within, well, I'll tell you some timelines that we do know. The tax, if approved on November 6th, will take effect April 1st, 2019. So there is a lag time of five months almost from the day the voters vote. And that has to do with just the administrative time that the state, which collects it for us, needs in advance. Then, from that April 1st date, it will take about another 90 days before we actually see any money in hand. So the businesses will start collecting it April 1st, about 90 days later. So about the start of the next budget year, we would actually start seeing some of the revenue. I would say within that first year, that first fiscal year, which would be July 1, 2019 to June 30 of 2020, we'll have a really good handle on what is generated, what that additional 1 cent is generated. We know, because we know what Measure W is doing now, that we're in a fairly tight range of 1.8 million to 2 million in new revenue. Unless we get a 2007, 2008 style economic crunch, we're going to be in that annual revenue range. And we'll have another year of history on cannabis at that point, so we'll see what the annual revenue from that is. I think those two things alone, if you were to have Measure U approval and cannabis at the same or somewhat higher level than we have now, we have basically solved our general fund shortfall and created revenue streams that will allow for a little bit of additional, again, that traffic officer, the graffiti removal worker, not going hog wild, but within a year of, well, let's say July of 2020, we'll have a full year of history at that point. And in the meantime, we're working on the expenditure side of the budget as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Just so you know, I've already mailed in my yes. But I came because it just said 1 cent. So we're at a 7.75%, so we're going to go up to 8.
8.75, right.
So that, we're up there with Santa Barbara. You said theirs was an 8.75 now?
Yeah, the chief did some research for us, and when the Ventura County Star said we would be the highest in Ventura County, that is true. That would put us a half cent above Santa Paula, which is at 8.25 now. I personally don't think that that's really going to have an impact on people's purchasing decisions, but
Well, what my question was, because I really didn't realize, as far as the building and expanding, through property tax and homes, I really didn't realize we were that tight in Port Hueneme because I live on the north end. But if Measure U passes, it sounds like the general fund is going to be pretty well between the cannabis and the Measure U, pretty well funded, so we should not be seeing any more requests for quite a while
that's certainly my hope. I
Okay.
think that between those two things, and then the other economic development stuff that's happening, including, like I said, Ross, Havenburger, Ace Hardware, some of those big by the way, good news, the old Mary's Market that's been vacant forever on Ventura Road, CVS is going to be coming into that, revamping that whole part of the shopping center. They will tear down the laundromat that's just south of the market. That'll become the CVS prescription drive-through area. CVS, we already have one CVS over on Channel Island, but apparently they feel like they can make a second location work here. And I think you'll see people from South Oxnard coming down and using that one as well. So that will be a little bump to our sales tax. So all of that combined, I think we really are in a position to get ourselves stabilized for a decade or more.
When is the CVS first?
They're in the second round of plan check right now, so they haven't been issued building permits. I would think that construction will start first quarter of 2019, this next year, so within about 4 months, 5 months. And it may take a full year, 9 months to a year from the time they start construction until the time you're actually walking into their grand opening. So it's still a ways off, but the fact that they're in second round of plan check now shows me that it's going to happen. They're committed to doing it.
All right, because I've been hearing this for 2 years.
Yeah, I know.
And just out of curiosity, has there been any uptick in crime directly related to the cannabis places?
The answer is no.
How do you track them?
Based on calls for service in that immediate area, such as the shopping center at the 99-cent store where we have 2 dispensaries, and the respective shopping centers where all the other 2 dispensaries are at. So we're able to track calls for service from there. And we have yet to really receive any type of major crime issues. And actually, it's actually cleaned up the area because you have an armed guard now that's patrolling the immediate premises as well as the parking lots and surrounding areas.
Does Senate Bill 54 cost the city any money?
What's that?
SB 54?
Sanctuary.
Sanctuary space.
Not that I'm aware of.
Is that something we could look into? The reason I say that is because we are one of 2 charter cities in the county, and the courts have ruled that we can opt out of SB 54. Charter cities have that opportunity. So if that could save us money, there we go, there's another spot. You want any solutions? There's none.
That's where I am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason why the money for Measure U is going to go to the general fund instead of to a specific place?
Yeah,
That we could spend it in
that has a lot to
specific
do
place?
with strategy for what is more realistic to get approved by the voters. In California now, based on the Constitution and all the court decisions, if you tell the voters in your measure, this money is only going to be used for public safety, law enforcement, or it's only going to be used for parks and street maintenance, if you specifically say it's only going to be used for 1 or 2 things, that's considered a special tax, and a special tax requires 2/3 voter approval. Just like I talked about Tom Fig and the parcel tax. Anytime you do a parcel tax in California, this goes back to Prop 13, that requires 2/3 voter approval. So one of the reasons you're seeing cities lean toward these local sales or transactions and use taxes is it's a majority vote threshold, 50% plus 1. And some communities you can get, a lot of very well-off, financially well-off communities, you can get 2/3 for a parcel tax or another type of tax. Or in some cases, cities where there's just a lot of fear about crime, crime's a major problem, you might see a police tax be able to get 67 or 69%. But I've looked at the stats, and it's just you're much more likely to get approval for a majority vote. That 2/3 threshold is just really challenging. Plus, I don't like having 1/3 of the voters for something as important as this is, be able to control the whole process. That kind of just irritates me. So I understand why people that are anti-tax in general like that 2/3 requirement. But in a case like this, where we're talking about general purpose needs of the city, I like the fact that the majority of rules in this case,
that's one reason we chose that.
I'm not anti-tax, I'm pro accountability.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking to make sure that like whatever citizens oversight, that it is being spent on what
Get her on the council.
we want it to
Right.
be spent on.
Yeah, think
So
about
that's
Ryan.
where that question came from.
Yeah, Ryan 2020.
That was very good.
I would suggest, instead of being aggravated by that 1/3, that one look at it like one needs to make an argument sufficient to convince people that it is good for them, and that would be the way to look at it, instead of an aggravation about 1/3 wagging the dog.
This was addressed already, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. Is there a reason why this building was used for this meeting, being a private building, as opposed to using one of the city's buildings? Why was it chosen? Just wondering.
Because this was centralized, we hadn't gone out and actually specifically spoke to a lot of the surf sites here. It allowed to accommodate for a lot of people. We could add more chairs. It was donated to us to use, free of expense, and so really those were the reasons why.
Centralized would mean so everybody in the city can have easy
So
access.
it was an option.
This is the far end of the city.
This or the community center would have been the other option.
The community center would make more sense, but that's a city-owned building and it's a little more centralized.
And it was donated, but we had to have the yes on you signage.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yes.
Have we exhausted all the questions?
We good?
Anything else?
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.